Shana Tova, everyone. We are starting, this is our second evening of Rosh Hashanah. Remember, Rosh Hashanah is 2 days. It is the only holiday that is 2 days. What does that mean? It means something very interesting. That most of the Chagim, if you know, because we are in Galut, because we are in what is called exile, we generally have Yom Tov Sheni B'Galut, which is the second day of Yantif in the Galus, in the exile from the homeland, the exile from Israel. So that's why we observe 2 days of Sukkot, 2 days of Simchas Torah, 2 days of Passover, the last 2 days of Passover. But that idea does not apply to Rosh Hashanah. It's not 2 days because of the Galut, because of the exile. It is even celebrated 2 days where? In Israel. In Israel. And so this is, I don't know about you guys, it was a great day for me and Leah and my family, hopefully for yours, to reflect, spend some time together. Maybe you're a little tired. But that's what it's about, is to explore the entire emotional spectrum, the entire human experience. You can go one day feeling one way, right? You can force yourself to be happy for one day. I've even tried to do that. I've even suggested that we look for 24 hours just to be happy. But you will have, in the next 24 hours, some ups or downs. And that's what this is about. To be able to see and tell, hey, am I able to truly uphold this new idea, this new year, this new way to approach the new year, even through 2 days? And that's, we can hold on to anything for 24 hours, right? How can we do it in 2 days? So we begin. Brina will lead us this evening, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shana Tova, Erev Tov. We begin on page 9. In your Machzorim, let's sing together Ma Tovu as we come together in this sanctuary. Ma Tovu, Ahalecha Yaakov, Mishkena Techa Yisrael. Ma Tovu, Ahalecha Yaakov, Mishkena Techa Yisrael. And unlike Shabbat, where there is an introductory section, Kabbalat Shabbat, we start on Rosh Hashanah directly with the Baruch Hu. Please rise on page 18. Seated, we continue silently. El Chai V'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai. Ha'ma'ariv Aravim. On page 20, we read of God's love as expressed by giving us the Torah. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael. Ve'ahavatcha al taseh mimenu le'alamim, Baruch Atah Adonai. Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohecha, bechol levavcha, ubechol nafshecha, ubechol meodecha, v'hayu advarim ha'ele, asher anochi metzalecha, hayom alevavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha b'derech, uvshokbecha uvkumecha, ukshartam leod al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Continue silently, pages 24 and 26, coming together towards the end of page 26. Leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lichov lachem lelohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Continue on page 28. Umalchuto beratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira v'simcha rabah ve'omru chulam michamocha ba'elim Adonai mikamocha nedar b'kodesh noro tehilot osefah malchutcha rauvanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe ze'elianu ve'amru Adonai yimlach le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar kifad Adonai et Yaakov v'ga'olam li'ad chazak mimenu baruch atah Adonai Kol Yisrael. Page 30, we continue with our prayer for evening peace. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha baruch atah Adonai apores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. We rise at the bottom of page 33 as we proclaim the day of the sounding of the shofar. Tiku tiku v'chodesh shofar v'keseh le'yom chagenu ki chok le'Yisrael hu mishpat le'Elohei Yaakov. Page 34, as we separate the beginning of our Mariv service from the Amidah. Yitkadash ve'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah ve'almad yivrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei ve'chad v'yishtabach, v'yitpahar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemed kudesha, berichu, le'ela, le'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tishbechata, v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, ve'imru, amen. Mari Vamida, pages 36 through 46, and you may be seated when you are finished. Adonai Satai Tifta, Adonai Satai Tifta, Ufi Agir Tehilatecha, Ufi Agir Tehilatecha. Conclude this section of our service, Kaddish Shalom, page 50. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabba, amen. Ve'alma dibrachi rute ve'amlich malchute, ve'chayichon uve'yomechon, uve'chayit echol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman karib, ve'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarech, le'olam kol amei amaya yitbarach, yitbarach ve'yishtabach, ve'yitpa'ar ve'yitramam, ve'yitnaseh ve'yitadar, ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה שמי דקודשה ברכו לעילה לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא תשבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן תתקבל צלותן ובאותן לכל ישראל קודם אבוהון דבשמיא ואמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen.
Yasher koach to you,
Baruch Tei.
Brina. Is this microphone working? Is this okay? Okay. Because it's crowded tonight. It's so packed. I want to make sure those in the back can hear me. Nice to see you and welcome. Good to have you here. This is almost as short of a service as Havdalah. Yantif evening services are very short, right? We don't have Kabbalat Shabbat. We go right into the Baruch Hu, really. And here we are. So just a few words of Torah, and then we'll conclude with Aleinu, and then we will return tomorrow at 9:30 to share one more day, which is part of the full day, Yom HaRichta for Rosh Hashanah. So first off, I want to wish you a Shana Tova Metuka, a sweet new year and a healthy year, please God. Just a thought that I wanted to share with you guys. What is your favorite prayer? What is a prayer that you return to, that you go to? I know when I was little, I had little thoughts, but I didn't realize those were prayers. I know my sister, she would always have this routine before she went to bed where she would thank God for everyone in her life, maybe say names. We all have that. Some people touch a mezuzah. I know our daughter touches the mezuzah and has a ritual around the mezuzah. What's your prayer? What is the go-to for you? Sometimes for people it's thank you God. That's a good prayer, isn't it? Sometimes it's please. Sometimes it's I can't do this anymore. A little bit of rebellion. One of the prayers that I really enjoyed and I learned from people in Alcoholics Anonymous. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But what I loved about that prayer more than anything wasn't just what it said, but that it was easy enough to return to on a regular basis. For those who study any kind of Eastern religion, at times it's about a mantra, returning to something, being able to have something to hold on to go back to on a regular basis. In the Jewish tradition, sometimes that's the Shema, isn't it? Sometimes we say it and we don't even realize that we're just saying it almost as a mantra to bring us back. In fact, that's how the tradition really stands, is that it's the first thing we learn as Jews, isn't it? And potentially it's the last thing we say before we pass to the next plane of existence. If you want to, look at page 873. It's a beautiful little prayer in our Master. And at times we overlook many of the prayers in our books because we're so focused on what's next and maybe the service will be over. But here, if we look, you can see on page 873, it says to look forward. But I don't know if that's a really good indicator. Remember this afternoon or this morning when we learned together, we talked about, or maybe it was last night, I don't honestly remember what was said and when. But what we learned was that at times we as people, we have two things, two faculties that make us as human beings special. We have a memory and we have a imagination. The memory, look at this. Eternal God at the top of page 873, at the very top on the left, it says, Eternal God. We have to start any prayer with some kind of greeting, right? So here in this case, Eternal God, grant us on this Rosh Hashanah. Bring us into this moment, bring us into this time. Gratitude enough to look backward and be thankful. That when we look back, let us not look back at the resentments that we have. Remember, resentment really looks at, it's like it means to play over and over again. If you have a resentment, you look back and you play the thing over and over and over and over again. You relive it. To resent means to relive over again. And I've shared with you before, it's this idea that, hey, football's coming. My Cowboys play on Thursday night. I'm very excited. But one of the great things about the NFL and any sports now is that you can play the play over and over and over and over again. Whether it's good or bad, you can relive it over and over again. Well, we do that, don't we? With things that we take as slight or hurts that we have, sometimes we play it over. 10 years, 20 years. But look at what it says. Gratitude enough to look back and be thankful. Let us look at what was as an opportunity to be thankful. Can we look back at what was and what has happened and find the gratitude? Courage enough to look forward and be hopeful. Right? You say if you're living in the past, you're living in resentment. If you're living in the future, you're living in fear. Have you heard this? It's an interesting idea. What's the opposite of faith you hear is what? The opposite of faith is fear. But I think the opposite of fear is really a courage. Courage enough to look forward and be hopeful. That it might be. There might be. It takes real courage to have hope. True courage to say, I'm going to look at the future as hope, as opposed to looking at the future as we learned earlier, doomsday. Something is going to happen. That other shoe will drop. In fact, it's so much easier to look at the world without courage and in that mindset. Something bad's coming. How much courage would it take to look to the future for hope? And faith enough to look upward and be humble. Know your place. Know your place and where you come from. And kindness enough to look outward and be helpful. I think this prayer is one that I suggest when you're bored over the course of the next couple of services, and it will happen, and you're waiting. Turn to page 873. Say this prayer a few times. I'm finding out that we have different machzors, so I hope this is all page 873. You have to forgive me. We have several, and I'll make an announcement tomorrow to bear with me. But it's in the back of the book. Let us return to prayers on a regular basis to help us through moments, to get perspective, and to help us understand a new way to look at the world. Shana Tova. We conclude our service on page...
We start concluding our service.
We start concluding on page Elena.
Page 58. Please rise for the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, v'atech k'du ha'liotzer b'reshit, she'lo asani ha'aratzot, ve'lo samanu b'mishpachot ha'adama, she'lo sam chelkeinu kahem, ve'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishkachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu, shehu notei shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, u'moshav yekarov b'shamayim b'ma'av, u'shchina tuzo, be'gotei meramim, u'Elohim כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יראה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. You may be seated. Those in mourning, those observing a year outside, please remain standing. Join me on page 64, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yitkadah, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma, Divra, Clarita, Be'amlich Malchutei, B'chayechon, U'byomechon, U'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'gala, U'bizman Kariv, Ve'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mebarach Le'olam Olam Me'almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal Shemei D'Kudsha Rechu. La'ela La'ela Mikol Birchata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechemata Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru. Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabbah Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru. Amen. Oseh Shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh Shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. You may be seated. We continue on page 66 with the psalm for the penitential season. Antilerot betuv Adonai beretz chayim kaver el Adonai chazak v'yamitz libecha v'kaver Adonai el Adonai. Don't think there's any other announcements because the rabbi already mentioned services tomorrow. Oh.
Part of Judaism is Yiddish kind of humor. And I saw something about 2 minutes ago that I thought was real humor. So I stand up and we're doing the prayer, and I see there's books and policies on that row because they had to get their seats for tomorrow. So I thought that was very funny that they left their toilet seat bags here and their prayer books so they could get their seats for tomorrow. We're back. And also, there's cold water and cold juices if you want, but you gotta go through the kitchen on the way out. You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Now we conclude our service on page 68 with the traditional Yigdal. Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach nimtza be'enet el metziuto echad ve'en yachid ke'yichudo na'olam v'gam ein sof le'achduto ein lo demut haguf ve'en oguf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'en reshit l'reshito ino adon olam lechol notzar yoreh gedulato u'malchuto shefa nevuato netano el anshe segulato v'tifarto lo kam be'Yisrael k'moshe hanavi Navi Umabit et Emunato, Torah Demet Natan, Le'amael, Al Yad Nevio, Ne'eman Beito, Lo Yachal Yithael, Velo Yamir Dato, Le'olamim, Le'zulato, Sofer Ve'yodea, Setarenu, Mabit Le'sof Davar, Be'kadmato, Gomel Le'ish Chesed, Kemi Falo, Noten L'Rasha, Rakerishato, Yishlach Leketz Yamin, Meshichenu, Liftot Mechakeketz, Yeshuato, Meitim Yechayel, Berov Chasto, Baruch Adeat, Shem Tehilato, Meitim Yechayel, Berov Chasto, Baruch Adeat, Shem Tehilato. Shana Tova.